Before we tuck into some juicy slices of melon, please leave a like, hit subscribe and ring that bell. To try Melon for yourself, check out the link in the description below for a free lifetime plan. And if you decide to subscribe to a paid plan, you will get 20% off your first billing cycle just by using the link in the description. Hi, welcome to another episode of Melon Slices. In this one, we're starting at the very beginning. We're going to set up a brand new account, and then we're going to look at what will be waiting for you on the other side. So here we are over at melonapp.com. You can tell that because we have a little logo in the corner that says Melon. Down here on the left-hand side, you'll see that you have this red area where you can enter an email address if you already have an account, or you can click or start streaming with a different account. Here at this point you can enter that email address to get going, or you can click on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch or Twitter, and if you have an active account for any of those, you can use that instead. So here we are then in Melon Studio, the engine. This is where it all happens. Here you can be a game streamer, an actor, a talk show host, a producer, a director, and even an engineer. The studio is divided into 5 key areas. We'll have a more in-depth look at each of them in the future, but feel free to play around here anyway. You're not live or streaming until you press the Go Live button down there. So let's look at each of these sections in turn. To the left is our guests or participants panel. You'll always see your camera here. As long as you've got one chosen, it's switched on, and importantly, you have given permission for Melon Studio to access your camera. Now the same thing applies for your microphone too, and when you log in for the first time, Melon will show you how. But basically, you just pop up here to the search bar of your browser, click on the little padlock, and make sure that under the settings here you have camera and microphone switched on. It'll prompt you to reload, so let's do that. And once we're reloaded, we are back in. Let's hide the search bar. So there is our streamer for today, young Abby. Let's bring her into the center so that you can see her. And she's showing us her delicious avocados, because Abby has a stream show that she calls Abbycardo. And we'll talk through over the course of this video how to set up Abby's show ready for streaming. So let's hide Abby for a second. The other sections on this page are down to the bottom left here, which I call communications and support. The center, this big green yellow box, that's the area that your audience will see. Everything that happens in there, pretty much, with a couple of exceptions, will be seen live in your stream when you go live. So your cameras, your guests' cameras, any overlays, any branding, any banners, any messages from your audience will all appear in there. So obviously everything else around the outside is exclusive to you, and most of it to your guests as well. Just below there we've got layouts. You need to add a guest or screen share to see those layouts, but if we bring Abby back, there she is, we'll see that we've got 3 boxes. There are only 3 for when there is you on your own, and essentially they're different sizes. So this one is obviously full screen, then we can go back a little bit and back even a little bit more, depending on what you want to show around the camera. Below there we've got a bunch of tools. We've got our audio, we've got our camera, we've got the ability to share screen, we've got reaction noises, We've got an option to record locally to our local computer and avoid going through any external platform. And we've got an option to record and stream. When you record with this option, which is a setting that we'll have a look at in a second, it actually records and stores that to Melon's servers. So you can go up at any point into your account, as long as you've got one of the paid accounts, and access the stored video or even separate audio. And what's really cool is that Melon will even separate out the audio of your guests. So that makes it that little bit easier when you want to edit afterwards in post, as we professionals call it, and tweak the settings of somebody who maybe their mic was a little bit weak and you didn't spot it during the show. So let's have a look at each of these tools in a little bit more detail. Well, firstly, it does show us the microphone, and you'll see that as I talk, there's a little green bar that's going up and down. So that's giving me a visual indication that my microphone's working. And if I click on mute, you can obviously no longer hear me. If I hit the arrow beside there, firstly, it shows us in a little bit more detail, and the further I move the microphone away from my mouth, the weaker that's going to get. Below there, we can choose which microphone we want to use. I'm using my Elgato, but there are several more that you could choose if you wanted to, and clearly the one that you've chosen is highlighted in Melon's gorgeous melon pink. Let's close that down. Below there is an audio out. Now, this is set to headphone, and 99% of the time that's what you want. If you were to use a speaker, for example, what would happen is the noise of your microphone coming back through the speaker would be picked up by your microphone and create the most hideous echo. That's why most of the time you see people wearing headphones. Now, if you're doing a straight U2 camera, then it doesn't really matter. You don't need to wear headphones because you can hear your own voice, but you'll still want to have that speaker off, because it will come back through the microphone and create an echo. It's almost impossible to avoid. Now, actually, Melon do a pretty good job of trying to eradicate that. They've got an echo cancellation down here, but it won't deal with the most obvious echo. What that will do is take out some of the echo that you might get in a large room, for example. So it's quite useful for that. But some people do say that they can hear clipping on your voice, so I would recommend not using that unless you absolutely need to. Below there, stereo audio. Now bear in mind, these are settings for your microphone, not your guests. They will have their own settings like these, and they can manipulate their microphone or their camera. Now you've got a choice here with stereo or mono. I would say, again, unless you're playing an instrument or you've got a few people around you in the same room, there's no great point in having stereo on. I always have it as mono, and that just reduces slightly the amount of bandwidth that's needed to send up the signal to the Melon servers. Below there, we can also allow Melon Studio to automatically adjust the volume of our microphone. So if I click that there, you will notice, you won't, because I'm not actually recording the audio through Melon Studio that you're hearing. I'm recording this separately, but your guests and your audience should have a more regulated sound. So if you get people in the chat saying, oh, you're a bit boomy, or there's a lot of gain on your voice, a couple of professional terms, then maybe select auto adjust, or alternatively pop up to your camera and you can actually slide the audio down or up and get the mix just right. And turning that off, you also have that option here as well. So as I move this, the bar also changes over Abby's camera. There we go. Thank you, Abby. To the right of that option, we have our video options. You can click stop video and that will switch Abby's camera off. If I bring Abby back and click on the up arrow, we can see a representation of that camera, and we can also mirror the camera. Now, The advantage of being able to mirror a camera is useful, as far as I'm concerned, if you've got multiple cameras or maybe you're sharing a screen. One of the big tips that I like to drop in on content streaming is that your face on the camera should always be looking in the direction of what you're either talking about or talking to. So in this case, for example, if we had, and we'll have a look at screen sharing next, but if we had a screen here, then Abby looking into that screen would make sense. If, however, the screen that we were sharing was on the left-hand side, then maybe flip the mirror so that Abby's looking at the screen there. Or if Abby has a guest, then Abby will be talking to those guests on the left. Now, just to illustrate this in a bit more detail, I'm pulling up this video, which is a recent Stadia Rokk show that I do on a Tuesday on my channel, and you'll see here how I've positioned myself not only to the top right so that if anybody's getting affected by the logo, it's me, but I'm also looking into my guests rather than looking out at my audience or looking off to the right hand side away from them. It creates an illusion that people are all together in the same space. And I even see some of the biggest game streamers and content creators committing this cardinal sin with their little camera down the bottom left-hand corner, looking out to the left and the game behind them. It's a psychological thing, it's a subconscious thing, but you will notice it. And now that I've pointed it out, you'll also notice it even more. Now, just to the right of, as we're just in the video, just to the right of the layout options, if I click on the three dots, you'll see there's a ton more here. Now, these will only appear when you have multiple guests. And in fact, if you look on the Stadia Rokk show video, there are other options there that I could select if I wanted to. Also, in the camera panel, just below the Mirror My Video, we have the actual camera itself, or video input. In this case, I'm using NVIDIA Broadcast. And then below there, we can choose the resolution for our camera. Now, 1080, if you're doing a solo stream, is as good as it's going to get. And that will give you the highest quality if your camera can support it. But if you're doing a multiple guest stream with maybe 5 or 6 guests, then actually dropping that down will help to reduce the amount of bandwidth and just give a little bit more smoothness to your stream. And to be fair, if you imagine that 1080p is you at full screen, if you drop that down to say 480, that's going to be roughly half. So if we then go down to the smaller screen, or even the thumbnails that you have when you've got multiple guests, nobody watching is going to notice the difference, quite honestly. So it's up to you. I've chosen 1080 for Abby because she's going to be talking about avocados for hours on her own, streaming away to her audience. So that's absolutely fine for Abby. And there are no other settings in that panel. Now, to the right here is the share screen. Again, we have an option to stream our screen at 1080p, that's maximum. But if you're likely to show a smaller screen, then you can turn that off. And it will help, particularly if you've got lower bandwidth for your stream. And the final one on this panel is you can choose whether, when you share a screen, it will automatically appear on the main canvas of Studio, or it will sit over here with your cameras and your guests until you're ready to add it to the stream. I personally prefer that. I like to queue up my shared screen, whether it's a website or a YouTube video or some news, and at the moment that I'm ready to share, I just have to click show on stream and it pops up over here. Here we have 3 options. The first one is obvious, screen. The second is video, and this actually allows you to upload a local video. Now, this might be something that you've shot on your phone or a video camera, or maybe something you brought in from YouTube or some other source, and you can upload that from your local machine. And then finally, background audio, and this allows you to bring up some music. So for example, this is the theme tune for the show, and as you can see, it brings it in as a source here. We can either get rid of it, we can increase or decrease the volume, and of course we can play it. And when we click play, and at any point we can either turn the volume down, stop it playing, or cancel it. So if we click on screen, we now get some choices. Entire screen, and then depending how many monitors you have, you can choose 1 or 2. Window, and this will choose the open windows on your desktop, again across all monitors, or Chrome tab. If you're using the Chrome browser, it will allow you to choose any open tab on any open Chrome window. So in this case, I've actually opened up a Melon page and we can bring that in. Now notice down the bottom left corner, you have an option to share audio. My one word of warning with that is that if you're sharing a game or a YouTube video, there may be copyright on the audio. So be very careful when you're playing that back. I would say, if in doubt, switch that off, particularly if you're in a talk show, for example, and all of the noise should be your voices. So let's share that screen. And you'll see that it's coming on the left-hand side again in our guest or participants panel. And here we have options to get rid of it or show it on stream. So Abby, you're about to be shared with a screen. Now, as you can see down here, we've got a bunch of new layout options. So at the moment, we've got Abby in the smallest one, but we can take her up so that she's almost the same size as the screen itself. And on the other monitor, if I manipulate the size of the window, you'll see that this is affected in our stream. So I always recommend having a little play to get the right shape and size. If you've got a window that's right across your monitor, then you'll see that the content has become really small. So shrink it down to a size that feels right. And even then, if when you're scrolling down to look at the text, if it looks too small to you, it'll be impossible for your audience to see. Bear in mind, a lot of the people watching your broadcast could be watching on their mobile devices. So in your browser window, hit Control or Command plus, and that will increase or decrease the size of the font. Okay, and don't forget, when you do have your screen open, you need to manipulate that window, not what you're seeing in the studio. So looking at those layout options again, there's Abby where she's almost as big. We can make her sit over the top. We can bring her down to a corner, this one the right, this one the left. We can make her the larger of the two. And this again is where your mirror video really works well, because now we've moved her out the way and she's looking at that screen, and you can see straight away what a difference that makes when you're watching this. You feel like she's actually interacting with that screen. One more, which is to push the host to the side, and again on this one, probably a good idea to increase the size of your window so that it fits the studio a little bit better. There we go. And then we can bring it all the way back again to any of the previous ones. So at any point we can double click on our screen, what Melon calls Spotlight, and if we look over to the left with the camera, we can actually see that it says Spotlight there, and there's a little yellow arrow that shows that it has been expanded out. Double click again and we go back to our original layout. And in fact, if we double click on Abby, we get the same thing. And over on Abby's camera, it says Spotlight, and we can bring that back. Okay, next up we have reactions. Now I don't have the audio coming through for this, but as you can see, there's a whole bunch of different options. There are 10 of them in total. Air horn, which is a clap. You can work that one out. A second clap, a chant, cheers, hooray, a gasp, laughter, haha, laughter too, haha, and a couple of drums. Use them sparingly because they can be overused, but they're really good for the odd jokey quip or a punchline or emphasis occasionally. And then the final two, we have record and go live. Now by clicking the first record, we are recording our show locally. A couple of things: you'll need to make sure you've got enough hard drive space, otherwise that could be a disaster. But once it's local, make sure you remember where you've saved it to, and then you can bring it into an editing package and do whatever you need to it, or simply upload it to the platform of your choice. You may, for example, want to pull it into something like DaVinci Resolve or Adobe Premiere or any number of video editing applications, so that you can put a specific intro over it or some kind of additional music running all the way through. A whole bunch of reasons why you may want to do that. With this Go Live option, we've also got the little stream recording. This will put a copy of whatever you stream live up onto the Melon servers, so that you can go there afterwards and retrieve your recording in the same way. I think that the local recordings are slightly higher quality, but I tend to just leave it with stream recording, because that way you're not having to think about where you're going to save it and how much hard drive space you've got. So over to the right hand side now, and what we have here is what I like to call the menu bar. It's divided into half, top and bottom, and on the bottom we have the bell for notifications and an option to flick between the light mode, which we've currently got here, and the dark mode. Now in my notifications I've nothing to show you because I've looked at them all. But when you open your version of Melon Studio, you will see a bunch of notifications in there that stretch back over the past few months with all the glorious and juicy new features that Melon have introduced. Now, dark mode's actually quite important. More than it simply being more comfortable on your eyes, what you have to bear in mind is that your monitor is actually a light. Now, the quality of your camera, your audio and your lighting are the three things that will set you apart from very amateur to professional looking. Lighting, for example, is best handled outside of the camera and the monitor. But when you have light mode set up and maybe your studio is filling the screen, the problem is that all of that white will act as a light on your face. So whatever lighting you've got going on elsewhere in the studio, it will be illuminated even more by your monitor. The problem is as well, as your guests' colours change and you bring in different screens to share, that light will become stronger or weaker, change colour on your face and just be a little bit obvious. So I personally prefer to flick it into dark mode, which we'll do now, and you saw that earlier when you saw the recording of Daily Rokk Show. And this also makes all of the elements, I believe, within Studio a little bit more prominent as well. So I personally prefer this as an option and it works well for me. And then above there we have 1, 2, 3 icons, and then the top one, which is your account details. Quickly in there we can change the language, we can have a look and see if any of the links that we've given to friends to sign up and experience Melon, where they get 20% discount off their first purchased bill cycle and you get $10 for your troubles. Don't forget there's a link down in the description. You can go and have a look and see how they're performing. Another way here to enable light mode, support if you want it. This will take you through to a bunch of FAQs and tutorials as well, including the blog. The blog's worth looking at on a frequent basis because they drop all of their new upgrades and updated features in there, and not always on the bell. Settings, we'll have a look at those in a second. Keyboard shortcuts, which are really, really useful. And you can find those as well down at the bottom left-hand side of your studio. And of course, the ability to log out. I never bother to log out. There's no great reason to, but some people like to. And from a security perspective, particularly if other people are using your PC on a regular basis, that's probably not a bad idea. So below the accounts option, you'll see that there are a couple of slider buttons here. That's the menu. Below there is the ability to show chat in your streams, and then below there the ability to schedule future shows. So we start with schedule. So simply by clicking on schedule, you'll get to choose all of the platforms that you have set up, the destinations to stream to. So I may want to go to my YouTube channel, I may want to go to my Twitter channel, or Twitch, or Facebook, or even LinkedIn. And once you've chosen your destination, it will prompt you to enter a title and a description for the show, what date and time you want to go live, even allowing you to upload a thumbnail so that when you view the upcoming show on any of your chosen platforms, there's something more interesting than a default icon there. We'll have a look at that in more detail though in a future show. Now, showing the chat is a really great way to engage with your audience. Unfortunately, I can't show you that because currently we're not streaming, but if we have another quick look at that Rokk show video, you'll see down the right hand side there that we have a whole column of people leaving messages, chatting. Now they're doing this in your destination. So down that side, for example, if somebody is chatting from YouTube, it will show a little icon to say that they're in YouTube. But if they were chatting from Twitch, it would show that they were chatting there instead. You even get an option within Studio to reply and to specifically reply to just one destination or all of them at the same time. Now, next to the chat stream at the top options, you also get an option for private. Now, what this allows you to do is send messages that only your guests on your stream can see. They do not go out to your audience. Really handy if they want to provide a link, for example, for something they want you to pull up and screen share, or maybe they just need to tell you that they've got to toddle off because they've got to go and pick up the kids from school. But it's a great way to talk without talking to your guests. You may have seen me enable this speaker. What this does is it leaves a little note that only you hear that there is a private message. Without that there, you may not know that they've sent you any messages at all. So if we now move on to menu, this is probably the most complicated aspect of Studio, but really most of what's happening here you won't need to worry about when you're streaming. For example, here we determine the look and feel of our show, of our stream. We set up banners, scrolling tickers, and even queue up videos to play during our stream. We've also got our settings and finally a little section that we'll cover off in more detail in the future called apps. Now, I've already made a little bit of a start here on Abby Cardo's show. We've given her a lovely green background, and of course she's set up all of her cameras and the room that she's streaming from so that it looks nice and professional. But we want to add more elements to make sure that we've got our branding in there, like a logo, for example. Make sure that the fonts and the colors all represent what we want the world to think of us as. When you have the free version of Melon, you'll find that there are some themes down here that you can use, but most of them will be locked until, of course, you upgrade to either the standard or the premium subscription, in which case they become available to you. Now, these themes will have everything built in, fonts, colors, the whole 9 yards. So if we choose this one, for example, and we can see that Abby has now got a purple background. If I choose this one, she has a brown background with some spiky yellow things going on. And if we go back to our default profile, you can set 10 profiles up here. I'm using about 8 or 9, I believe. The idea is that you can either accumulate all of the brand items, standard banners that you use for each show, for example, and have them as a profile. If you only do one show, you probably only need the default profile. But if, like me, you do multiple shows, and some of those shows have multiple options within them, then you can create multiple profiles. So, for example, let's have a look at Rokk Review. Now, Rokk Review, let's hide Abby, has a distinct look to it, a different background, a logo, and of course a little scrolling ticker down there. And we've also got a bunch of banners, which we'll have another look at in a second, which have been designed to work in that specific profile. If we go back, I've also got another show called Stadia Rokk Show, which we've seen earlier, and that one has multiple sections. It has a news section, it has a game review section. So I've set up different profiles for each of those sections, and each of those profiles has its own overlay. You could just bring those overlays in within the show, but by having them as profiles, it means you've only got to go very quickly to your profiles and click to enable it rather than dig through menus to find your overlays. So for example, if we go to Pro Tip here, we'll see that we've got the banner, the background, a main banner down here, and a banner up here. If I then choose a different one, let's go to Judge John. Similarly, those two elements have changed. Equally, other aspects like the videos that I've got uploaded for those sections, they also are changing for each of those profiles. So I can set all this up ahead of time and not have to worry about it when we're about to go live. And that's the key thing here. So once again, if we go into the design sections, as I've said, you have themes, which are a collection of the design elements, your fonts, your font colors, your background overlay, pictures, the whole works. Or you can go in and edit any one of these yourself by clicking on Edit. Now here we've got Style, Brand, Fonts, Background, and Overlay. So Style is your banner style, and if you hover over the eye, it shows you, indicates to you what these all look like individually, so you can make a decision on which one would work for you. I've chosen rounded for Abby's show. Below there we have brand, which is our primary and secondary color. If we look back again at the banners here, you'll see that on some of these there's one color with a little color to the left or just above it, and that is your secondary color. And the secondary color background also relates to the ticker that you may choose. So we've gone for a lovely green and a lovely red for Abby. Let's close that one up. Below there, we've chosen our primary and secondary fonts. And again, holding over the little I for information gives us a visual representation of what this refers to. So this is telling us that the fonts in the main banner will use this font selection, and we've chosen Quicksand. And then this one shows us the ticker below, which is saying that that is the secondary font. If in doubt, hold over the I. And then again, we've got color options depending on which fonts and what we're using them for. Let's close those two down. Our background, in this case, we've just gone for a solid color. So all I've done here is changed this option to change that color to this yellowy green. If we click on that, it's the standard color choice. So you can either choose the intensity or saturation of the color, or you can choose a different hue from this bar, and it's represented over here in the little swatch. You can also reduce the transparency as well, and as you'll see, the default background is black, so as we decrease the opacity, we get a mix with the black. Or you can upload your own background as long as you've got a paid subscription. So we can choose any of these backgrounds. There's one from the theme. Here's a solid white. Here's a lovely bokeh background, which actually goes with quite nicely with Abby's background. As you'll see, she's got a similar kind of blurred effect going on. And don't forget, you can always bring your camera in when you're playing with any of these options to see how they will interact with your camera, etc. And you'll see the one you've chosen says live. Now in this case, we're going to stick with our background color because Abby likes a nice simple look. So we'll go back to this and hide Abby and hide our background. Below background and fonts and everything else, we also have overlay. Now I'm not using an overlay for Abby Cardo, but we could choose any that are provided, or of course, as always, upload our own. We'll turn that off and we'll click apply and make sure that all of our theme changes have been applied. The one thing that we didn't look at was logo. In this case, I've uploaded a lovely little logo for Abby Cardo, and you can upload your own here. You'll always have the Powered by Melon logo, and that one will be the default logo for the free account. You can turn it off but you cannot replace it. I quite like my little Abby-cardo logo, so we can start to bring these options in now. Here we are, here's Abby with her logo. And bearing in mind again, when you're choosing the layouts, what's going to work and what isn't going to work. In this one, the logo is clashing with the camera. In this one, it works quite nicely because it's well within the constraints of the camera, and with this one, it's outside. But here's the good news. If you click on the logo, you can not only move it wherever you want, but you can increase and decrease its size as well. Just like that. Perfect. So that's your basic design, look and feel. Let's go back to the next option in our menu, which is text. And here we have banners, tickers, and a really amazing thing called teleprompter, which we'll cover in a second. Now, banners are those little boxes that we saw down the bottom there. They're what we call lower thirds. It might be, for example, you want to leave a little message there, like "Welcome to Abby's show," or you may use them to introduce a guest with their full name, maybe a Twitter handle or something along those lines. Now you'll see when I click on this, it does say drag to move around. So just like the logo, you do get an option to choose where you would rather have your banners show up. You can't at this moment in time change its size, but it does shrink or expand depending on what text is within it. So bear that in mind as well. And also bear in mind that if you're going to pop it somewhere over the camera, you're likely to hide somebody's face. Let's leave it right there in its default situation. A little bit higher, OCD. And in fact, if we quickly go back to design and go into edit current theme, here we can have a quick look at what the different styles of banner will look like when we choose them, now that we have one in place. So there's the default, which is nice enough. There's casual, which has the secondary color. Now you'll see that I've actually used the two colors of Abby's logo, the red heart, which is the stone of the avocado, and the green, which is obviously used in the avocado. So that's mirrored here. And you'll want to think about things like that when you're setting up your branding as well. And then finally, boxy, which does the same thing, but has a little red bar down the left-hand side, which acts as that secondary color. Now you may look at this and think, that black type is a little bit strong in the green, in which case let's go down to fonts, click on black, drag up to the top left corner and maybe use white instead. You'll soon know if it works or not. If we were to choose a red, for example, it would clash with the green, and for some people, particularly if they have visual impairments, that may not be a great thing. So a nice white or a nice black is all that you really need. We'll leave it at white. So we've looked at banners. Below banners we have tickers. Now a ticker is essentially a scrolling banner, and if I show this one, which is pre-prepared, yuck with the colours, we can have a look at those in a second, but you'll have noticed that not only is the ticker moving across the base of the screen, but our banner actually lifted up automatically to accommodate it. You do have an option to have a ticker running along the top as well, and even to choose an alternative right to left instead of left to right. Now, I'm getting serious vibes from this color clash, so let's quickly go back to our theme and have a look at where we're getting that color. So that dark green is here under secondary color, and against the red it really isn't working. Let's pop it up to white. There we go. And again, you have an option. If you feel that that font is a bit imposing, we can always choose a different one. And we can move up and down with our cursor keys, hitting enter to try each one until we are comfortable with it. Once more, you have no option yet to play with the font sizes or bolds, regulars, italics and so on. But there are many fonts to choose from, so I would suggest have a little play with each one until you find a font that you feel works. Let's go back. So we've had a look at the ticker and we can turn that off. Tickers are useful if you want to leave a little scrolling message, like we've got here about please leave a like or please subscribe, or maybe you want to put the names of your guests with their Twitter names, or if you're running a charity stream, you could put the link in there to your GoFundMe or a phone number. any number of things, but they just grab the viewer's attention more than a static banner. They can also irritate them though, so I would never recommend leaving them on screen all the time. I would simply have a ticker running for a specific section, maybe when you're talking about whatever it is that is in the ticker. Let's hide it. And below ticker, one of my favorite new features, teleprompter. You may have noticed that your newscaster or weather person is actually reading from a scrolling auto cue. Of course, we don't see them doing this, and we don't see their eyes moving either, but it's a really magical thing, and it looks like the person that's talking to you really knows their subject. Now, believe it or not, we have our very own auto cue or teleprompter built into Melon Studio. The way this works is that you put your text into this area in here. Let's just copy some out of this Melon website that we have open over there. Let's paste it in there. And we can even scroll up and down to have a look at it in more detail. And then when we place this over our screen, you'll see that we have our text. Now, people watching this do not see this. This is purely what you see as the host. Not even your guests see this. And you'll see there are three options up here. If I click on pause, and you can also slow it down and turn it off. But if it all went a little bit too fast for you, and it usually does for me, maybe choose a half or less than 1. Maybe choose 50% or slower. And now we've launched a brand new redesign of your studio, packed with exciting new features such as text presets, theme styles, and many more. Our team at Melon has been thinking hard about how to make your streaming experience more enjoyable. We're confident that these changes will make you love Melon even more. Let's walk you through some of the changes. And there it goes. Now, if you've got to the end and it's still scrolling, just hit the little visual eyeball icon and that will get rid of it, or hide it over there. And you can add more of those, so you could have them for the various sections of your show, including the end. And they're just a great way to prepare for the show beforehand, get your stuff across without umming and ahhing, which we all do. It's a natural thing. Back up again. Next up is video. Very simple, this one. You have an option to upload clips or use some that are built in. Let's go to all clips and we'll see some that are built in. Now, these video clips are largely intro countdowns or outro messages, but you can also have ones that say, I'll be right back, if you need to take a little break, for example. And you can upload your own videos. So if you want to have some stingers, or maybe just show some videos at some point, you can use this. And it gives you an option to filter down between the stock, i.e. the ones they provide, uploaded, i.e. the ones that you've uploaded, intro, outro, and various durations. So it knows even how long they are, and it will let you choose the one that is appropriate for you. Now, intro and outro, let's have a look at intros here, and stock. Hide that. So what this will show us now, let's see, all of them, and there are quite a few, are all of the provided intro videos. And if we click any of these, but they've all got lovely music. So let's start this intro. So this is a countdown from 30 to 0, and then they go up from 30. You can have a 1-minute intro, even a 5-minute intro. Some of them are just text with maybe some basic colors. Others are a little bit more elaborate, like this one. One of my favorites, for example, is this solar eclipse. Let's have a look at the solar eclipse. So as you see, it goes across the sun for 5 minutes. Just a nice, gentle introduction while you're waiting for people to gather. This is really only useful for live streaming. I wouldn't worry too much about this if you're pre-recording. The concept is that it gives you time to go off and tweet or post on Facebook and tell all of your audience that you're about to go live. It gives them 5 minutes to gather and they can see when the show is about to start, even if you've scheduled it 5 minutes before this event. So let's cancel that one. Those are the intros. Let's have a quick look at outros. They are there again, depending on whether you have any of the two paid subscriptions, you will have access to more of these. And these simply pop up at the end of your show and say things like, "Thanks for watching," or "Thanks for tuning in." And you can just leave that looping away there for as long as it takes, just so that people can wind down and move on to the next one. Equally, you can, of course, introduce all of your own videos. I create little intro music and animation sections for all my shows, so I personally prefer to upload my own. And this is a great thing. If I go back to intro, and as well as the ability to hit play, you have 3 little dots with an option to set that video as your intro or as your outro. Now this is great, so when you hit record or go live, it will automatically play that intro sequence for you. You don't even have to go to videos to think about it, and the minute it finishes, you're on camera. Similarly with the outro, what happens there is that you click to stop going live, and then it will automatically play the outro video, and when it's finished, close down the stream. And of course, as I've said, you can upload your own video, and there's a maximum limit of 300 megabytes for each one, and they have to be MP4 or WebM. Below video clips is a green screen option. If you have a green screen, or maybe you have a background that's a solid color, bearing in mind it has to be well illuminated so there's a consistent light. No green screen application likes having inconsistent light. If you've got dark green to one side and a light green to the other, you will always get some kind of effect that you really don't want. But if Abby, bless her, had a nice consistent background there in a solid color, we could enable green screen for that camera, and we could choose a different background and fade Abby in and out depending on what her background is. Now we've chosen green as a color here. We can choose a different color. It will find the color that best suits in your video, and then you can just fade those in. It ain't going to work for Abby any more than it would work for me with my current camera background, but if you have a green screen, a big pop-up green screen, or as I've said, you've painted the background to your camera blue or green, then you can use this feature. Next up, the settings. Very simple, not a huge amount going on here really. We have output, so we can determine whether we want our stream to be in 1080p or not. If you are streaming on the free option, the free plan, you won't get this option. It will be 720 always, and then of course you get the choice later if you want it to be 1080p if you've paid or not. 1080p is the highest quality that you can stream on. But again, if you're having problems with your stream, if your bandwidth is not cutting it, or maybe one night you're having some really bad Wi-Fi issues, you can always turn it down to 720 just to make it a little bit faster for you. Here we have the record option. Now this is what we see down here over the Go Live button, and once selected, this will essentially save your stream or your recording to Melon's servers. Local recording is here as well, so you can have it happen in both places. You can have it saved to the Melon servers, and you can save a version locally as well. Maybe you're just a little bit paranoid, and again that tells you that that's what's happening. Record your streams locally for each participant and edit it later. So again, remember, it breaks the audio down of each of your participants, which can be quite useful. Talking of participants, the next section down is participants, and here it has my name. Now you'll see with Abby, let me show Abby's name, there we go, over the camera. You'll see that we've typed her name, and I've put her Twitter account in there as well. I always have these showing in my guest shows. They're particularly good for your guests, and it's up to them whether they want to show any information in there. When they click on your invite link to join you in a show, they get an option to enter their name as well. You've got a stream avatar. You can upload a different one if you want to. The advantage of that is that if I were to turn off Abby's camera, you'll see now that the audio continues, and you can see that waveform happening around there, and it has the little avatar as well. So you've got at least some representation of who that is with their audio showing. We'll leave her off for a second, shall we? I'm sure you're getting bored of seeing her. So we can turn the name on or off. With it off, it will show you a network quality icon. In this case, we've got all 5 bars, but that's because we're not streaming. But it will give you an indication of how well and strong your guests' streams are. Below there we have audio status, and you'll see that now it's added a microphone into Abby's name. In this case, unlike the network strength, your audience will see that icon. So if I were to mute, for example, the audience will see that that person is muted. They love nothing more than to say, "You're muted, Abby," in chat. So I don't personally worry with those. I usually turn it off. You either hear them or you don't. Below there we have TTS on join. TTS is essentially a little audio notification, a voice that tells you, very lovely lady, that somebody has just joined your participants list. Now, if you've got more than, say, half a dozen, they will scroll down and you won't always see that they've joined because they join at the bottom of the list. So it's quite useful to have that tell you that somebody has just jumped in and they're waiting to join in, and then you can just go over and, of course, show on stream to show them there. Below that we have a speaker indicator. Easiest thing is to just show you that one. It basically puts a little yellow box around the camera of the person who is talking, and then below there, name at the bottom. This simply allows you to have the person's name at the top or the bottom, personal choice. Then we have some options for your ticker. If you remember, we were saying you can go reverse direction, or you can have it showing along the top of the screen or the bottom of the screen, your choice. And then the final option is apps. We'll have a look at this in a little bit more detail in the future, but this is to do with some features that Melon Studio's sister company Streamlabs provide for content creators, as well as an option for you to have Melon tweet to your Twitter account every time you go live. Now, I tend to leave this off for one really simple reason. It will tweet even if you're privately streaming. One of the options that you'll have when you're streaming is to make it private, quite useful if you just want to test some features, or maybe you don't want it to go live until later. And this confuses your Twitter audience when they get a message to say that you've just started streaming. So I tend to leave that off. But if you don't often go private and you usually do stream live, then this is a great way if you forget to automatically tell your Twitter audience, which is probably one of the best ways to build an audience outside of Facebook, for example, Instagram, or Snapchat, etc. So that's our basic overview of Melon Studio. In the coming videos, we'll look at each of these features in a little bit more detail, including setting up your destination platforms, streaming to YouTube, and things to bear in mind. Hope you've enjoyed it, and see you later. Take care. To try Melon for yourself, check out the link in the description below for a free lifetime plan. And if you decide to subscribe to a paid plan, you will get 20% off your first billing cycle just by using the link in the description.